Hey people, while I was making that series in Timothy, 1 Timothy 5, something caused me to look up some symbols in there. I found this Children of Mu. It was a free book. I was able to download it from LinkedIn and open it with my Acrobat. And it's got a bunch of ancient symbols, and he explains the story of how he learned about it. And he's got several other books that I was able to find on sacred writings. But he explains here his story. He was getting it from the people who living in the places. He was a fisherman and writer, and he was learning what these symbols mean. And he was saying that they all come from this land of Mu over here. And the land of Mu went down, and the people had dispersed from there. And a lot of the language was brought to India. And it caused me to research India a lot. And like me, he was saying that he wasn't believing their interpretations. But it has a lot of symbols in this book and some explanations. And he says, a lot of these that were in Egypt, they came from Mu first. And he gives an explanation of the different crosses of the swastika and what they're meaning, some meanings to the numbers, and how they use two different languages in a lot of these ancient carvings. He says that these are four angles here, and this represents the four builders. The number 4 here, the builder, the pillar, the geometry, the architect, and the king. And so that's the difference in the swastikas, the different lines in them. So he was learning this ancient language, but it doesn't appear that he understood the Greek or Hebrew, because he just went with the story that they were given on that. He didn't say anything about them changing that language. He did say how they tried to change the language of Mu, though. But he says, the stories on these, a lot of them prove to be older than Mu. And he can tell because some of them were dedications to Mu. And so he knows those were within the last 12,000 years. But some of them are the temple of Mu, not dedicated. As he says, those have to be older. They were from the temple. I think I was Googling ancient Indian symbols when I saw this picture. And I clicked on it when I found this download. You'll see it in one of them past couple movies. You'll see it up on the left when I was showing a picture of what I was Googling. But he says this Mu means, the motherland, Mu. And so I'm fixing to prove without a doubt that Mu was myth. But do you know what myth means? He says Mu was in this area here in the Pacific Ocean, and gas cavities had collapsed, had caused it to collapse. So I dreamed last night that I was working on somebody's house and was going to lunch, and this big orange reticulated python was chasing me out wanting to play, and I was trying to get it back in the house so I could go to lunch. I'll figure out what that means by the time I'm done with this movie. But 2 years ago, I looked on Facebook this morning, this memory popped up. 2 years ago I had posted this. And if you go to Google Earth and Google Chaco Canyon, you'll find this old valley. And if you follow this river, especially when it gets to these tributaries, you follow them up and you'll find ancient settlements. There's an old dam. But there's many huge old ancient settlements out here. You find them up these old tributaries off of this river. And it appears to be huge old chemical processing plants. And you could tell by the way they built them, they were trying to insulate. They would double wall, a lot of it, triple wall, trying to insulate certain parts. And they're huge. You know, you can see this one was here far before this collapse. And it's many scattered around the river. And so I'm believing that, you know, Mu was here in America, in North America. So I was finishing up that last paragraph in 1 Timothy 5, and I was trying to nail down all those words, and it caused me to come over here to Titus 1. And so I was reading it last night, and it was in this paragraph called Correcting False Teachers. And so these last 6-7 lines, and it was in this line 14 is, you know, MH, much. And then this proseachonits. You know, pro is for. And so this is force, the force each on it. Much force each on it, you, I-O-U, Eudaikos, Eudaiko is. Myths. Myth, and so myth comes from the word mu, the mu, and then the THO, then, and that's where your word moot come from, to shut it up. You know, in the Hebrew, moody moot is death, and it's to shut them up. Hey, make them moody moot. And moot, you know, is where your word myths come from. The mu, to is. The motherland, to is. Into lays, on there, upon, apostropheminon. And so, you know, in that last movie I was telling you that, you know, 33.3% of the words in the Greek are only used this one time. You won't find them anywhere else in the Bible or anywhere else in any other ancient writings, just because it's poets putting these words together. But you say this, you know, this is the apostrophe is the base word for this, turning away. And you see it's spelled different every time. But you can see the phenomenon in there, like phenomenon. And so the APO, you know, is away. You know, that's where this away comes from. A waster. And then this Q, sometimes it reads a PH and sometimes it reads is a K. Come, K-O-M-E, come in on. A waster coming on. Then all hath they on. Then all hath they on. You know, so it's saying, you know, that in all these mythos is the truth. All hath they on. And so it's saying, you know, much force each on it, Eudaiko is. And what this turned into our word Dagos. Eudaiko is. You know, Dago is offensive term for a person of Italian or Spanish. And he's talking about the Italians, talking about the Romans. Then much force each on its Eudago is myths. The mother to is, the mytho is. And into lies. On thereupon. And told lies on thereupon. A waster coming on. You know, telling about the apocalypse is coming, the waster coming on. Then all hath they on. And so if you read between the lines, you know, these old myths is the truths. There's truth hidden up in the myths, in the mother to is. And so you can see, you know, why the Roman Catholic Church has interpreted Jewish as God's chosen people, because that's you Dagos. You Dago is. God is funny. Every time I read it, I laugh. Muktu is to into lies on thereupon. A waster the coming on, then aletheon. So this truth, this where your word name Althea comes from. It means truth, but it's coming from this Allah, they on, a waster coming on, then Allah, then God, they on. So there really is no nailing these words down. They're used a different way and they spell different every time. But Allah, the house of God is alpha, bits, bytes, the house, alpha, the God, habits is the word. And theon is also a name of God. And in order to nail this word down, I have to search every time it comes up and read every one. You see sometimes it's aletheia, aletheon, and aletheas. So this word Christo, Jesu, most of the time it comes up it's like this. I found it once where it's Jesu, Christu. But this word Jesu, sometimes it's Su, and sometimes it's Soon, and sometimes it's Sus. But if you look at this word, come over here to the eyes, you see that this is the only word that's spelt with a IHS. There's no other word starts with IH. It's just these three Jesus. Each Su, each Soon, each Sus. Then it goes to the K. There's no other word. It's not a common name. IHS. It wasn't a common name back then. This is the symbol of the Catholic Church, the IHS. And then this is the Vav down here. A nail is a Vav. It's connector. It's a connector pin. This is the Jesu down here. And when I look in the Egyptian writings, the eye was a feather. But you see in a lot of their interpretations, they'll interpret it as an A. They'll pronounce it as an A. And it got me to thinking that this is another secret code that the Pope's carrying around there. The IHS and the cross. And it got me to thinking that when you see this IHS that's in no other words, that's a code to read this backwards, SHI. And then here, VO, as in Shiva, the Christ of Shiva, the Christ of Shiva. And that has a meaning in the Indian. A chrysalis is a pupa, an insect pupa, especially of a butterfly or a moth. That little worm that's inside the cocoon is a chrysalis. So if you Google Chinese gods and go over to this wiki page, it'll give you a list of them. And I've only searched from the S down, but you can see this she in several of them. And you'll see these down here, Yu Shi and Yan Shi. Yan Shi is the primordial beginning, the primeval Lord of heaven. And they drew him kind of like we draw Jesus, given the same secret hand signs. And he is one of the three pure ones, resides in the heaven of jade purity. Was once the supreme administrator of heaven, but later entrusted that task to his assistant, Yu Hong. And Yan Shi became the overseer of both heaven and earth. And if you was to worship him, he liked the offering of jade and silk. Silk is made by a chrysalis. And this Yushi, you could read it, Shi, Yu, Shiva, the Y is the V, the Shiva. Is the master of rain, god of rain. And often appears with Feng Bo, the god of wind. And he has another form of Chi Songzi, as depicted as a chrysalis, a silkworm, who has a concubine whose face is black, holds a snake in each hand, and has a red snake coming out of one ear and a green snake coming out of the other. That's why we have port and starboard lights on our boats, one red and one green. And so that makes me think that that represents The staff of Jacob in Orion. The one star is red, one star is green. But you can see in this Shiva, if you read that the other way, it's IHSOU. The IHSOU. And so it's the same word, just twisted. And so, there's also a Jewish period of mourning called Shiva. And so that makes me think that it's, they get up in the morning the same as they did in Mu, and they look at the moon, and they look at Venus. So Shiva's known as the destroyer and the supreme lord who creates, protects, and transforms the universe, and the goddess, or the Devi, but also part of the Trinity, Shiva, with Vishnu and Brahma. And his attributes are the serpent around his neck, the crescent moon, the holy river Ganga. And Ganga is actually an Indian word for the female buds on top of a marijuana plant. His third eye, his Trishula, the trident of the devil, and his drum. Drum is the word for south in the Hebrew. And the Sanskrit word Seva means relating to the god Shiva. He's the Seva. And the vision so has Ranam interprets Shiva to have multiple meanings: the pure one, and the one who's not affected by the three gunas of Prakriti. And his many names, include the meanings of Lord of the Universe, or Lord of three realms, Lord of compassion, Great God, Maha Great, and Diva God, Mahadeva, and Supreme Lord. The ancient Greek texts of the time of Alexander the Great call Shiva as Indian Dionysius. And that means, Dhyani is to pay homage to Zeus. And other writers say that, both Ruda and Shiva are akin to Wodan, the one-eyed god. And so the root, Shiva, comes from the word meaning in whom all things lie, pervasiveness. That's just kind of like, everywhere. In whom all things lie everywhere. And Va, the embodiment of grace. In all things lie the embodiment of grace. And you can see that here in this IH, each is of, OV. Each is of, in all things lie everywhere. And so the lingam is one of the representations of Shiva. And you can see on here that it's the Li. This middle line's broken, and this is the symbol of Mu in the middle here. And so that's the fire. And so that's just 3 lines. And to make the first hexagrams, you would add the opposite, which is water. And so that would make fire waters. Fire waters is spirits. And so his day comes, the 13th, 9th, 14th day, the day before the full moon. But his celebration, comes for Easter, before the arrival of spring. And Shiva is portrayed with the sacred halo and the sacred thread. So Shiv Ling, that which is in everything, the Ling, the spirit, the magic chrysalis, is formed from the highest concentration of the Shakti. Within the Shiv Ling, ordinary consciousness undergoes a metamorphosis, like a moth does inside of its cocoon, a change from within, and transforms into the pure super consciousness of Shiva. This is known as the dance of chaos. This everything is within, and it's inside of the cocoon. You are the cocoon, and it's inside of you, and it's trying to dance its way out of the cocoon. So Mayans and Aztecs saw the god of fire as an obsidian butterfly. Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, descended to earth primarily in a chrysalis. And Aristotle called the butterfly by the name Psyche, a Greek word for soul. The the body goes in and the soul comes out. So Yan Shi resides in the heaven of jade purity, and it is believed that he came into being at the beginning of the universe as a result of the merging of pure breaths. In the nose, out the mouth. And Emperor Yi Chu, has a legacy of appearing as a door god. This is the way, the door. And so it makes me think this word Christu, is a birth, is a new birth from the pupa to the butterfly. And the Christu, each is of, Shiva, or each is of. We all have it in us. So when I start this line to finish this chapter of 1 Timothy 5, I'm going to start it here with D-I-A, through, martyr ome. And this martu, this is the Hindu word for, it's where the mortal comes from. And through the mortal, Rome, you may, in a peon to thee of, or thee who, to Christu, each is of, to the new birth, each is of, to what ton, the fashion of lecton, the angel on, in a thought to file, Q-I-L, file, A-X-E-S, in a thought to file access chorius. But if you know how to read the iota, this is the apostrophe. It means read this backwards. It says to file, ax, A-X, and then hex, hexagram, 6, the hexagrams, the hex, all of, and then S-E-S, backwards and forwards, S-H-S, to file, ax, the hex, all of, says, chorius. It's talking about the I Ching and the hexagrams. You have a upper trigram and a lower trigram is the opposite, and that creates hexagrams. 6 lines. Gram is a line. Six words, 6 lines, 6 letters. In a thought to file, ax, hex, all of, says. Chor is procrimatos. Pro is for the crim. Crime, usually they say that's the judge. For the crime, it as made in pojon. Made in impose. I'm not imposing, am I? It's a twist of impose, impojon. To made in impojon, according to proscalizin. And so a scally is a scallywag. It means a poor person that's probably going to be hung for not paying his bill. Scally is derogatory, a rascal, miscreant, or scallywag. A jobless yob who has little or no education is suspected of having committed some type of crime. A suspect, for scallies in. That was poor white people getting beat down by the police in Liverpool. Through martyr ome, in a peon to thee who to Christu, each is of, to ton, the fashion of lecton, the angel on, in a thought, file, ax, hex, the 6 all of, says. Chor is for crime, it as made in pojon, according to for scallizin. So I was finding so many Hindu words in there. I actually found the word Hindi in that chapter, and that's why I pulled up this Hindi dictionary to compare all those words to it, and it's really easy to see that it's really close to the ancient English. And so a lot of the words, they're going to be Hindi, but some of them they twisted our English language in, and some of them they weren't able to change the meaning of the words. But I'm gonna cut this off here, and I'm gonna finish up this chapter. I'll put all 5-6 lines in one. Good day.